Okay, so the Dana 60 swap with the 14 volt is underway. Before, had this in there. That's my Dynatrac high pinion JK style Dana 44. That thing has been awesome. I got nothing but good things to say about Dynatrac in there. Now, because I am not rich, there's my new Dynatrac 60, and what new to me is I bought one that had basically, it was just a bare housing with knuckles, and it had 5-on-5.5 hubs on it. Well, I sold those hubs, those Dynatrac hubs, to a guy, and I bought these new 8-lug hubs to match my 14 volt and my Hummer H2 cheapo wheels. I've already done a video that talks about how to put the ring and pinion in this bad boy, so that's already done. I got the bolts in there. So there's an ARB locker in there. Next I'm gonna have to measure, and I'm gonna get some Dutchman axles and put the big Ford brakes on the outside. I figured that part out. And then we're gonna start cutting and welding and bolt that bad boy up under the Jeep. So this is kind of the start of that project, or in the middle of that project, but now we're getting serious. I wanted to show some of the new components and old components. This is my outer Dana 60 35 spline. This is my inner short side Dana 60 35 spline. Check out that nice machine work. Dutchman axles, they helped me get the measurements. Worked out fantastic. So I wanted to do some comparisons. And first I'm going to compare what a 35 spline Dana 60 and I think this is 31 spline Dana 44. This is out of a 3/4 ton Chevy Dana 44. This is going in my Pro Rock 60. So next you want to look at the U-joints, and this is the big one. You know, there's lots of axles up to Dana 44s. You can put these nice Spicer, I think these are 297X. But man, you get to these 1440s or 1490, whatever these big bad boys for the 60 are. That is some serious beef. Probably the biggest upgrade, though, on the whole axle is really this front outer. I mean, look at the difference between this 35 spline Dana 60 outer that's going in my outer and this 3/4 ton Chevy Dana 44 style I was running for years. All right, so now we're going to compare something real quick that's just a critical strength piece that a lot of people maybe don't fully understand, and that is a Cclip retainer for a U-joint and a full circle clip. So here we have a Cclip, and here we have a full circle. Full circle clips are a pain in the butt to get on. In both of these axles, once you put the cap in here in the hole, get there, the U-joint has this groove in it, and in that groove you can put either one of these, or you can slide one of these on before and pop it on afterwards and use a full circle clip. The big deal about this is that when this U-joint is set inside that axle and is being held in there, kind of like you see here, these are Cclips. You just got that little Cclip, and so there's a significant portion around here where this Cclip, if you get a lot of torque on it, they tend to pop out. When they pop out, next thing that pops out is your U-joint cap pops out of here, and then your axle self-destructs. Okay, full circle clip. Pull off the caps. Put the full circle clips on before you place it inside. And then you drop that bad boy in there. And then I gotta put the camera down, but you're gonna basically pop the cap in and push the caps in from both sides. And then you're gonna use your little tool to clip those on after you get them pushed in most of the way. Okay, so now I've put one cup on. Still got the ring there. You can see that little groove. It's gonna go onto here. Just gonna continue to tap that one down a little bit. Okay, so once again, place your full circle clips on there. In this case, I'm going to put my stub axle on. Bam, bam, get that around there. Make sure all that stuff stays on. And I'll take one of my caps and then we'll put it on there. Oh, okay, so now I've got it. Turn it on and in. And then I take this little hammer. Now it drove down. And here I am using my snap ring pliers to go ahead and get the full circle clips on, and we are done assembling the axle shafts. Okay, and now comes the what we call $1,000 question when you're putting axles in. Are they going to fit? Are they going to line up? Will the splines be good? Are they the right length? Fortunately for me, all of those things worked out just fine. So I am very happy with that. Okay, so assembly of the hub. Pretty simple stuff. You got your brake rotor. Doesn't go up from the outside, it goes on from the back, and you stake it in. Before I did that, you have to press the bearing races in here. I use the same brass drift, something that soft metal. Just kind of freeze these things up a little bit, get them nice and cold. Then you put a little heat on here and then just drive them in. Then you got to stake all these 8 lugs, or 5 lugs, however many you have. In this case, 8. Perfect world, you would press those in. In my world, getting pretty close. Yeah, it's in. You can tell when it bottoms out. Okay, and that's that. Now you got your rotor that ready. And so now what we're going to do, I've got both of these ready. So I've taken a bunch of this marine grease that I'm going to use. Using marine grease because I expect to be in the mud a lot. So why not use something made for water? Down inside here, I have put a good amount of the marine grease in here, rubbed it all around, so there's plenty of grease in there. And I am going to pack this bearing. This is a messy process. Get your stuff out. Now what I did before I packed this, I made a video of this, cleaned it with diesel fuel and then used compressed air to blow these out. They were new, but they had been packed a long time ago because the guy never used the axle. So you just start working your way around with a bunch of grease, spinning it in there, and then you gotta get it to push in from the backside. And you know, this is a messy process, but just do it. If you don't get that in there, all that other work is for nothing. So I'm gonna go ahead and pack this inner bearing and then the outer bearing, and then I'm gonna put my seal, which I've also put grease in, drive that bad boy on. So this is gonna drop in there, the seal's gonna go on. Okay, so now we're gonna put it all together. I have put all the grease in here, greased the bearing for this side, greased this, greased the inside bearing, put a little grease on that, and now I've got to kind of set that in there. Okay, a little fast motion. Set that rear seal in there real good. You got your bearing already installed on the back. Make sure that's all good and put in there. Next, you can put the little seal that keeps, there's bearings right there in the spindle that support the axle. You slide that bad boy on there, so you got your spindle on. Takes 6 nuts on a Chevy style. This Dynatrac one takes 5 nuts and actually has one that's an Allen head that threads in. I think Chevy ones are a little offset, so they can only go one way. Torque those down good. I just use a little impact wrench. Get them bad boys in, and you'll have your spindle on, and tighten up that last Allen head one, and then you'll have your spindle on. Once you get the spindle on, you're going to pick up your hub, and your hub has the seal on it. You're going to slide that bad boy on there. Take a little bit to work it on and get it right. Yeah, there it goes back there. Then you put your bearing in the front, and then you put the first of your 2 spindle nuts on. Okay, here's some fast motion using that 6-prong on a Dana 60. It's a 4-prong on a Dana 44 spindle nut wrench, and you go ahead and
tighten the first one down. Usually what you do is tighten it down to about 25-30 foot-pounds, and you back it off about 1/8 of a turn. Make sure you don't have any play. There I am trying to shake it, make sure it spins good without much shit rattling back and forth. A couple adjustments, you'll be good. Once you get the first one on, then you're going to take that little bend over snap ring. It's not a snap ring, it's just a little device in there that'll bend over the second. It's a locking mechanism on the second spindle nut. So then you put the second spindle nut on and use that same 6-prong ratchet, special socket. You get that bad boy in there, torque it down good and tight, and then you'll go ahead and bend one of those little tabs into the nut to lock it in place.
Okay, talk a little bit about the brake setup I did on this Dynatrack housing. So as I've talked about before, the knuckle uses a Chevy spindle. It has this cast-in mounting for the big Ford brakes. They're 13-inch brakes, 1.1 or so inch diameter rotor. Now there's a couple choices. If you get the Dynatrack hub, you can just go to them and they'll sell you what you need. I had a 5-on-5.5 hub on here, and I got a 14-bolt 8-lug rear end, so I matched this up, and I didn't go with the Ford Super Duty because that's that weird metric pattern. So this is an 8-on-6.5 Chevy style hub. I got it from Solid Axle Engineering. A little pricey, but pretty good work. Doesn't rust in. I think they may have plated it with nickel or something. I'm not sure what they did, but good piece of work. They make 2 versions. I think in retrospect, I might have gotten the stock Chevy version. This one is sort of a custom one. The stock Chevy version is a little thicker back this way. And then my challenge was to find a 13-inch diameter rotor that would mount on this hub, that would put this the right spacing back so that this 1997 sort of F250, 350 rotor would fit on here, and it would fit on here at the right place. Now, if Matt will come up here and get close, what you need to do is when you look at this rotor, it's got these 2 little tabs here, and right in here, in that little gap, that's where your rotor has to run. And I was finding it was too far that way, and I needed to get a rotor that was farther back. So when I got the first rotor, it was an F350, and it ended up being like way over here, and it wasn't going to work. So then I started looking at other rotors. Now Raybestos has a great website. You can go on to Raybestos website. They have a catalog. It lets you do a search. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a 13-inch rotor, 8-on-6.5 with this thickness that I needed for the rotor itself. And then there was a couple of choices that came up. I ended up getting this one. This was the tallest one I had that they could sell me, and it moved it back another 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch, and kind of got me about where I needed to be. So now when I go to put this on, I can see that, you know, I went and put it on and put my bolts in here and said, hey, this is great. And I noticed that, you know, I was still, if you look at it, I was still a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is just put a washer, get a nice flat machined washer, and it's going to be about maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, and put one on the top and one on the bottom. And then I've sort of spaced my brakes out, and there's no rocket science there. And people might say, oh my God, you put a washer there, that's no big deal. You tighten this stuff down. You know, we're talking about putting F250 brakes on a small Jeep, so not too worried about the durability. If you look at the side of the brake, the bolts that hold these on for the Jeep, they're like little toys. And I got it all to space out and work. The one thing I had to do that didn't let me get just everything off, you know, out of the parts catalog was when this rotor went to fit onto this hub. Let me come over here. I'm going to show you. This is my brake video of how I set it up. This circle right here. So it's got to press onto here. The circle that this came with, and I'll put the part numbers out there in my spreadsheet of what I use. This is out of a 2002 Chevy. It's rear brake rotor. You can see it's got this extra thing for the emergency brake, which you don't need. But this circle here. I had to put it on a lathe, and I machined these rotors out so it fit nice and tight here. Otherwise, it wouldn't go on. But just with that little bit of machining there, which took me about an hour to do, got everything to fit up just right. And so that's the setup I'm going to use. Really happy with these big, giant dual piston. I guess I could have gone to Dynatrac and paid a couple $1,000 and got all this stuff. I don't know that that's necessarily the way I wanted to spend my big dollars. So kind of figured it out myself. These rotors are $65. These calipers are $80. You know, brake pads. You know, so now I have stuff that I can just go to the store and replace. Cool on Dynatrac to have figured all this stuff out. Love the stuff they build. I'm not going to say really great things about their customer service. Tried to get them to build me shafts, gave them the number off the axle, did a ton of stuff. They never helped me out, wouldn't call me back. They weren't interested. I've had other people with similar issues. The guy who bought the hubs off of mine had to buy mine because Dynatrac wouldn't get him the 5-on-5.5 hubs they used to make. Oh, we don't make those anymore. And really, they're just a Chevy hub with a little spacer put on them. So you end up, you know, when you get some of this one-off kind of custom stuff, you know, as much as possible, you want to try to keep using factory parts and have a parts list where you go to the store and get what you need. You know, Ford, Chevy, Dynatrac specific. You know, you got all these different parts that you're using, and that's, you know, you want to be able to just go and get stuff. Not everything. The axle shafts in particular had to be custom length, and kind of glad we did that. The Dutchman did a fantastic job on those. So now I've got all my Dynatrac Dana 60 housing assembled. I kind of know what parts I need if I ever have to work on it. Like I said, there's going to be a spreadsheet that'll detail all this stuff, and I can move on. Okay, well, now I got all the internals on the axle except the hubs, which I'm waiting to get in. Well, I went ahead and put the axle in. I just hooked up the coilovers without any springs on them. Just attached them to a couple of tabs on top so I can position it. Got some straps kind of holding it. And now the trick now is to try to see just how far up under here I can get this thing to fit. So first you get it sitting up under there. Then you start to look at how much up travel can I get. So I'm going to start jacking it up and get it put up in there and see how far up I go before I start interfering with stuff. So things you want to look out for as you're starting to put your axle in. This is my steering arm. This is that cool Genrite one. It goes way up there instead of way down here, because if it were down here like a drop one, this would clearly hit it early. Now, pretty clearly this axle still has to go back some and up, but you know, you start pushing everything up, and you start getting into position, get it as far forward and as far up as you can go with those trade-offs that you have, and hopefully still be able to hook up. This is where your track bar goes, this is where your steering arm goes. You still got to hook all that stuff up to the axle. So step one, and start pushing it on up and in there. Cool. All right, so what I'm doing today is just making a cheap mock-up for a tie rod on my Dana 60. I do it this way. Works well enough to mock things up. You split the piece of Schedule 40 PVC, you shove an old tie rod in there, and you clamp it down with a hose clamp, and it'll hold together enough to allow you to. So to cut it, I just use one of these really thin reels. So you cut it, get a little screwdriver, and you gotta pry that bad boy open. Get them facing about the right way. Trick is just kind of getting it to start in there. And these are pretty hardcore. And of course, since these are old tie rods and I'm not all that worried about it, I just kind of beat it in place. And before I tighten down my clamp. We're gonna go put it on the front of the Jeep. So, project install a Dana 60 is ongoing. Right now what I'm doing is putting together some sort of test arms for my 3-link suspension. The way I'm doing that is down in here. So I've got my joints here, and I've got these brackets that were welded on that axle when I got it that have just been tacked on, and I was just going to use them to see where they needed. What I'm finding is I'm going to need to have these turned at a degree. And then of course I'm using my handy dandy Harbor Freight pipe bender to bend a couple. This is just some fairly thin wall tube that I'm not going to use. I don't want to weld it to my permanent stuff, so I cut notches in it with a little mini grinder, and then I clamp it, and it'll hold it in place. And so now I gotta get one on top here. Not sure I'm going to use this as the permanent mounting location, but it's convenient. I've got a truss that bolts on over this Dynatrac Dana 60, and then I'm gonna run that back and just tack to this hole here. I'm gonna run a 3rd link there so I can have that thing just kind of there, so the axle doesn't rotate back and forth. And then I'm going to start adjusting the lengths and get it as far forward as I can. And I'm going to check tire clearances and jack it up and down, and get that axle as far forward, and kind of built myself a little fakey tie rod using some PVC and a couple old tie rod ends, and it looks to me like I'm a little far forward. My old axle was lined up here with these really nice bump stops. You can see I've been a little hard on those with my old axle, so my guess is that I am a little bit far forward. However, I'm going to see how that works. This bracket is for my track bar, and as you can see, as I come up, I'm going to have to go in, up, and over that. So there's a whole bunch of getting around stuff. Now I think because of all of this going up and over, I'm actually going to end up putting the 3-link over on the other side where I have a little more room. So as you look over here on this side, let's flip this tire around. I actually think that when I get to it, I'm going to put my other 3-link bracket right up here, and it's going to go up into this dead space right up in there, and it's going to run right along the frame back to there. That's a little tough to see. Maybe from the front you can kind of look back and see that little bit of space between the frame rail, and there's a bracket there I got to cut off, and probably an exhaust I'm going to need to move. But if I can get that 3-link over here on this side, that might give me a little more up travel on this side, and up travel is what you're really looking for here. So I've got some fabrication to do, and this is part of it. Just starting to get things set up. So I was watching Nate, Durf Lifestyle, and that dude is awesome. He does some great videos, learned a bunch of cool stuff from him, and he and a couple other guys I've seen, he's one of the best ones. Ultimate Dana 30, and for his application, it's pretty cool. And I was putting together my video about my Dana 60, you know, and I got to thinking, you know, why would you want a Dana 60 after you watched his video about how great that Dana 30 was? And it looked pretty strong, and that was cool. So here's some of the things that when you go from 35s to 40s, why you might need to go to a Dana 60, and why you might need to go to something bigger, and why you might not even need to cut that axle down. So what I've got is pretty much a full width. It's a 70-inch wide WMS to WMS, wheel mounting surface to wheel mounting surface Dana 60. Now the reason I got rid of my cool Dana 44 that didn't break that much, it was a Dynatrac high pinion, had the JK gears, thing was awesome, but it was built to stock TJ specs, so it was like 62 inches wide or something. This one's 70 inches wide, about 8 inches wider. And I had, you'll see, if you look at what the pictures I showed of it after I took it off and I was boxing it up and sold it, that it had a lot of wheel spacers on it to make it wider. And why is that? So here we're going to look at some clearance issues. When you start getting into 40s,
And here I am pretty close to full lock. And when you see this tire on a 70-inch wide TJ, and I got my custom sway bar there, you'll notice there's a bunch of tire rub marks right here. Even with like almost 2.5, 3 inches of spacer on that Dana 44, these tires would still rub. And these tires, as that tire travels up, you can see where right in here, that tire still might swing over and start getting into this, even at 70 inches wide. As you look at the back, other places my Jeep used to have lots of rub marks were on the control arms here. They'd get in there. You'd see marks on the frame. You'd see marks up in here, all over the place where your tires were binding up. So when you get to that 40-inch tire and you start wondering, why do you need that Dana 60? Some of it's strength, but a lot of it's, for me, who needs to cut one down? I can build this axle for about the price Nate put into his, maybe a little bit more. I'll have to get a rundown of the cost. Ultimate Dana 30, but now I can probably go to 40, maybe 42s, and I'm wide enough that I'm not going to be rubbing all over the place, and I've got it stretched forward so I can not rub that way. And so, you know, I just wanted to give an explanation of why you might want that Dana 60 and why you might not want to stick with stock width.